It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and Quark's upset. Bashir and Dax are in there together, and that's an affront to the claim he's already made on her. Bugger all of that, though, as Rom, the underappreciated brother, comes in with news that Grand Nagus Zek has disappeared. Their mum called to say he's overdue returning from a mystery business trip, but Quark refuses to believe it's anything more than him just deciding to take a holiday. Quark's in his quarters later, offering up religious bribes about Dax when she arrives at his door. She's a bit forceful, but that's not new to Quark after the Klingon sexy times he's had, and he hopes this is more of the same. He's destined to be disappointed, though, as she's here to deliver a message from Grand Nagus Zek. The mystery business trip was to none other than the Mirror Universe, him presumably deciding their Ferengi could stand a little competition from ours. Obviously, it's all gone down the shitter because, well, we wouldn't have a story if it was all fine and he came home with some duty-free and a new fridge magnet. The ding-dong between Terran rebels and the Alliance is still going strong, which you'd think would be a good market for arms sales. Unfortunately, the evil universe doesn't work like that, which is why he's been taken hostage by the Alliance and will be released in exchange for a cloaking device. Presumably the ones we already saw them using way back in Season 3 have been destroyed, along with all the data on how to make them. Regardless, Quark's got 3 days to come up with one, or Zek's going to get murderized, and evil Ezri here came to facilitate the exchange. Cloaking devices would normally be a bit of a bugger to get, were it not for the fact that DS9 is currently home base to a load of Klingons. Their security must be even worse than Starfleet, as Quark and Rom are shortly carrying a cloaking device down a corridor, with sneaky bastard mode engaged on it so nobody can see it. It looks like they've chosen the flagship of Martok, husband of Sorella, for the theft. This is a Ferengi comedy episode, of course, so naturally we have a little hijinks with Martok, husband of Sorella, and Sisko seeing them in a corridor before we deliver it to a cargo bay. Evil Ezri has set up the trans-universe teleporter while they were gone, which is handy as they're followed by the angry Klingon shouting of a general who's just realised his cloaking device has been nicked. That solves the argument of whether Quark and Rom should go with her to make sure the trade happens, and they all teleport away. Over on Evil Universe Terok Nor, which we've remembered is still in orbit of Bajor this episode, Quark, Rom, and Evil Ezri appear in the same cargo bay. That's a curious choice when rebels hold Evil Terok Nor and Evil Ezri's working for the Alliance, but it'll have to wait as we're in a firefight. Evil Victor Cheese Fountain is real in this universe, which raises a whole lot of questions we're just going to ignore. It's irrelevant anyway, as when Evil Bashir turns up with some rebel mates, the two continue their disagreement and Evil Mr. Cheese does a dead. Maybe he was working with Evil Ezri, maybe not, but the whole thing results in us all being captured by Evil Bashir and the Terran Rebellion. We're all locked up, and Evil O'Brien is apologising to Rom, the underappreciated brother, for nicking the cloaking device. The Rebellion, which we're now calling the Terran Resistance Forces by the way, has claimed it, and Grand Nagus Zek can go do one. Evil Bashir's less diplomatic and says they're all collaborators who should die, but then he's been a bit pissy ever since Evil Dax died. Looks like Rick Berman managed to fuck up 2 universes. We also learn that Evil Ezri isn't particularly committed to the Alliance. She's more of an odd jobber, and as the Terran Resistance Forces didn't pay her for the last gig, she took her skills elsewhere. That's still betrayal in Evil Bashir's book, so while Evil O'Brien manages to talk him into letting Quark and Rom go back home later, Evil Ezri will not be given the same grace. Let's catch up with Grand Nagus Zek on a rather large evil Klingon ship. He's sitting in another holding cell, and he's there with evil Kira. It would appear her return to the evil universe after trying to nick an orb from ours was not entirely successful. That's why she's so invested in Grand Nagus Zek delivering the promised cloaking device, as it looks like she was involved in the deal. It'll get her back in the good graces of evil Worf, leader of the Alliance, and thus mean her freedom. Just as well for her, then, that Quark and Rom have no intention of just buggering off home. They plan to escape, nick back the cloaking device, deliver it in exchange for Zek, then piss off with him and never come back. And just as well for them that evil Ezri has a mate. Evil Brunt, presumably not FCA, enters with a gun after some noise outside. He's already done the legwork of nicking the cloaking device and is here to rescue evil Ezri. He also invites Quark and Rom along and tells them they have refreshments waiting on the ship. We're in the mirror universe after all, so that means he's not an arsehole. Over on the evil Klingon flagship, evil Worf is sneezing. He's been trying Zek's beetle snuff, but plain evil Garak is more interested in getting him to kill evil Kira. Evil Worf only cares about the cloaking device. After that's been handed over, he'll decide what comes next. Sometime later, plain evil Garak announces the arrival of evil Ezri, evil Brunt, not FCA, Quark, Rom, and the cloaking device. Cue the immediate betrayal, and one that evil Ezri knew about, because she was only in it to free evil Kira, as the two are, of course, banging. Freeing evil Kira's obviously not great news for plain evil Garak, but he'll have to lump it. He can't even take his frustration out on Quark and Rom, as evil Brunt, not FCA, argues they may be useful. They're taken to the same holding cell as Zek, where he explains he got here by thieving plans for the evil universe teleporter from Rom, or some such bollocks. Bugger all of that though, as Quark only cares about escape. Evil Brunt, not FCA, thinks they should be arguing on behalf of freeing Quark and Rom, the underappreciated brother. Evil Kira disagrees, which is why she stabs him. Evil Ezri's quite upset by this, but not upset enough to argue the point with someone who has a knife covered in fresh blood, so she leaves instead. Up on the bridge, an evil underling has detected the incoming evil Defiant. Evil Worf thinks this would be a great time to test his new sneaky bastard mode, and he'd be right if it was working yet. Evil Ezri, who's up on the bridge now, points out one of their Ferengi guests would be the person to ask about making it work, so evil Worf sends her for Rom. Rom says he can get the job done, and as it means increasing their lifespan for a little while, there's no reason not to. Evil Ezri tries to tell Quark she's genuinely attempting to help them this time, which he obviously dismisses as bullshit. Rom fiddles with the cloaking device up on the bridge, while evil Kira tries to convince evil Worf to give her evil Terok Nor back. Rom interrupts to say he's done, which means evil Worf now has no further use of him again, and decides it's time for plain evil Garak to kill them all. Plain evil Garak's chosen method of execution is a particularly unpleasant virus, which Quark thinks rather amateurish compared to our plain simple Garak. It devolves into mockery and insults, all of which serve their intended purpose of delaying him. On the bridge, evil Worf orders them to drop sneaky bastard mode so they can open fire on the evil Defiant, and is greeted by the power going off. That's because Rom sabotaged the cloaking device, and we all rush plain evil Garak through the now disabled holding cell force field. We might have the numbers, but plain evil Garak has being a complete and utter bastard on his side. Quark is pinned down and about to get injected, when evil Ezri makes plain evil Garak spray himself instead. Questions of why she's doing this are pushed aside by the rather more important topic of wanting to run the fuck away. Over on the evil Defiant, shock at a bloody great big ship appearing in front of them has turned into realization that they're still alive. Even better, the evil Klingon flagship is dead in the water, so they stop trying to scarp her and start pooping at it instead. Once they've made their point, they give evil Worf a call and tell him he can either surrender or get kaboomed. Under the circumstances, he chooses the former. Evil Kira's decided she doesn't fancy being there when it happens, which is how she comes across evil Ezri with our lot. Once the guns are dispensed with, evil Kira says they should bugger off together. Evil Ezri declines and says she's staying, so evil Kira legs it alone, and is permitted to do so. We've all arrived back on evil Terok Nor, and the Terran resistance forces are proper chuffed at evil Worf being captured. Zek has learned precisely nothing from this whole misadventure, and plans to return for more profit hunting in the future. Quark's deeply opposed to the idea until he remembers it'll mean seeing evil Ezri again, though she's distinctly hesitant at the prospect of him hanging around. We throw evil Lita into the mix as well, just for the hell of it, and possibly to try and make up for how many evil regulars we killed this episode, so we'll leave our motley crew to bugger off home until the next adventure. Well, there it goes, kids, our last delve into the Mirror Universe on DS9. The tale of Alliance and Terran resistance forces ends not with a bang, but with the troubling squelch of a fart that did not deserve your trust. And it's such a shame, too, something I've said before, but bears repeating. The exploration began several seasons back with a look at the results of one of the more curious ideas from the original series, namely how Jimmy Kirk's attempts to make things better for everyone just resulted in a different bunch of bastards. That was a bold choice. To take a previous story from Trek's Golden Boy and say that, actually, he fucked the whole universe up is pretty brave. It gave us the chance to examine why things like the Prime Directive exist in the first place, and how interference for the best of reasons can result in unexpected consequences. It gave us the chance to question whether our own approach to governance is right or even possible under certain circumstances. It gave us the chance to see a second facet to characters we know and ask ourselves if, under different conditions, they could have been the same, opening the old question of nature versus nurture. It gave us the chance to do new things with old places and see what might have been, freeing ourselves from a universe that sometimes feels like we're following formulaic templates for stories. 5 mirror plots down, and what's the result? We've made another template. Discounting Resurrection from last season, which qualifies as a Mirror Universe episode in about the same way that Jaws qualifies as a nature film, the remaining 4 stories all hit the same notes. A character we know is the opposite there because this is a Mirror Universe episode and that's what we do. At least one named character dies because this is a Mirror Universe episode and that's what we do. We make a link between sexuality and evil because this is a Mirror Universe episode and that's what we do. What could have been a different viewpoint from which to examine things we've come to accept turned into farce, and deliberately so. Ira Stephen Bear considers the whole alternate universe thing to be silly in the first place, so decided to just roll with it and dial up the comedy. And you know what? Despite all I've just said, despite my whining and bitching, maybe he's right. To be fair to him, the concept does have an element of silliness to it. Science fiction's had plenty of goes at worlds where things are mostly the same but ever so slightly different, and no small portion of them have been silly. Flicking the bizarro switch is always going to come with an element of incredulity, so maybe I'm the one who needs to lighten up and just accept that Mirror Universe stuff was never going to be the analysis I wanted it to be. If I'm being honest with myself here, I think this stuff annoys me more than it would have done, because it's also pissing on something I like to see in Trek: consequences. Not just showing that Kirk's actions made waves he hadn't foreseen, but also that we do have an actual plot here that's progressing, and nobody seems to care. Humans as an oppressive regime, eventually overthrown due to the input from our universe, then gradually redressing that balance as a result of yet more input. Things here have grown. What was a rebellion is now called the Resistance Force. This world expanded in ways we often don't see with Trek stories, so having it become just a comedy felt wasteful to me. The most important part of that sentence, though, is to me. It is what it is, so let's stop whining about what it isn't and accept what we got, a bit of Ferengi comic relief. To use a metaphor from a while back, this is a chicken nugget episode. We're not supposed to think about it too hard, because this was never meant to be that sort of meal. We're not supposed to ask how Victor Cheese Fountain exists. We're not supposed to question why the Alliance doesn't have cloaking tech when we saw them using it previously. And we're certainly not supposed to notice that both this episode and Shattered Mirror had teleportation between stations, despite evil Terok Nor being in orbit of Bajor and thus a considerable distance apart in their respective universes. We're not supposed to do any of that because we're not supposed to give this one any more time than it takes to chew and swallow. This is a chicken nugget episode, and for all of my wanting it to be more, for all of my lamentation over missed opportunities, it would still be wrong of me to say that nobody is allowed to have chicken nuggets. To suggest otherwise would be to change something simply because I believe it's wrong, and we all saw how that turned out for Jimmy Kirk. End of episode.
It's not quite what I expected. You know, what with being the origin of one of the most important internet systems and all.
It's almost as though the guy who makes these was visiting a small coastal town in the northeast of England this weekend, and thought it would be funny to use photos of their bus station for the video.
Oh, brilliant. Now you'll have 'em trying to guess where in comments.
At least that'll be more entertaining than these end skits.
Alright, that's enough fourth wall shite. What are we supposed to do now?
No idea. Hey, search engine, what are we supposed to do now we're... Oh.
Well, I guess that means we're having a look around then. Woof.